DreAllDay.com.
You're now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day, to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative, which is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one show, one daily master class. We've got a framework, all kinds of frameworks about this. We've created a whole mindset and lifestyle around it. It is all under one umbrella that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic, I told you this was coming. I teased it in yesterday's episode, so we're going to get right into it here today. That some people are for purchase and some people are for rent. Now, this episode can be a sister episode, a follow-up episode to what I talked about in episode 1058. We talked about limiting your associations and understanding the different levels of people. Not everybody is on the same level. Now, while I do agree that we are all created equal, we do not all remain equal, okay, in life. And I think all of us understand this. You listen to a show called Work on Your Game. How many people do you know who could use some work on their game, but they're just not doing it? Now, before I go further into this, let me tell everybody, I have a text message line where I want you to text me and tell me the best insight you got from today's masterclass, or if I sparked an idea in you that you hadn't thought of before, tell me what it is. Or if I reminded you of something that you had thought of before, but you're glad I brought it back to the front of your mind, tell me about that. My number is 305-384-6894. Once you text me, not only will you be able to engage with me there, but you'll be in my texting community, at which you will receive my daily motivation text message, which I send out to everyone in my community. My number again, 305-384-6894. Now I'm gonna tell you about this episode right here for all of you who are listening, that what I'm gonna say here today might be a bit too real for some of you people's ears. Now, on the heels of yesterday's episode, I told you that episode was for professional athletes coming into the game, and point number two, I talked about how some females are for purchase, some females are for rent. Today's episode, the target audience for what I'm going to talk about here today are the males. This is for the young men who are coming up right now. I would say men up to the age of about 30. I think if you're over the age of 30, you should be wise enough to understand what I'm talking about here today. This could be a primer for you, or a refresher, or maybe you can just listen to it for entertainment. But if you're a male under the age of 30, listen to this show, and I know there are a lot of you who are in my audience listening to this, you're the person who I had in mind when I thought of what we're going to talk about here today. So for anyone who is not in that group, for any of the females who are listening to this, for any of you who are listening to this, or who are outside of the group that I just named, if you listen to the show, let's say parents, you listen to the show with your kids. I don't care if they're male kids or female kids. All right, this one is targeted to the kids. This is targeted not to the kids. This is targeted to the males, rather, who are going to become men. A disclaimer for the parents who listen to this with your children. You might want to listen to this one first on your own and decide for yourself if your kids need to hear this. I'm going to say some adult things here today that definitely need to be said. This conversation is very necessary, and I'm surprised that we haven't had it sooner. What sparked this idea was some stories that I've heard, and I've heard too many over the years, of men making bad decisions, and we're going to get to why they're bad decisions, and choosing the wrong women in their lives. We're going to get to why they were the wrong women, and then having to pay for those mistakes in the form of, again, best case scenario, in just the form of headaches, and they had to get rid of that headache, or worst case scenario, 18 years of payments and a lifetime of a human life that they brought into the world that they weren't planning on bringing into the world, just because they made some bad decisions. Now, this is not to blame anybody. This is not about blaming anyone or saying that a woman is wrong for the man making bad decisions. The man is 100% responsible here, because remember, here at Work on Your Game, we always bring the topic back to number one. Number one is you, the person in the mirror. You are the only thing that you control. Now, if you get around some people who are 2-minute people, but you end up spending 2 days with that person, metaphorically speaking here. So we have to stretch this metaphor out here as we talked about in episode 1058. That's your mistake. Now you realize they were a 2-minute person, but the 2 minutes pass and you're still hanging with that person. Now you're the dummy because now you're making a mistake. Now you know better, and now you're doing something stupid. Stupid is when you know better. Ignorant is when you don't. So let's get into this here today so I can, before I step on any of my points, so that everybody knows exactly what I'm saying here. I'll make sure I'm being explicit exactly what I'm saying. So all of you men who are listening to this right now, as you go out into the world, especially, this is targeted specifically to heterosexual men. You are attracted to women and you're going to be out here playing the game. However you want to play the game, just make sure you're not doing anything dumb. I'm going to try to help you out with that here today. Point number one. What do I mean by this whole euphemism? And I'm going to say it plainly. Some females that you're going to come across are useful for your temporary enjoyment, and some are possibilities for long-term commitment. I'm going to let that statement sit there for a moment, and I'm going to repeat it. Some of the females that you come across are useful for your temporary enjoyment. And listen, they're using you the same way you're using them. So this is not about treating females as any kind of inanimate object or property, because they're treating you the same way. So some of them are useful for temporary enjoyment, and some are possibilities for long-term commitment. They are not all in the same basket. All right, again, we are all created equal. We don't all remain equal based on the choices that we make and the actions that we take. There are females that you're going to run into, gentlemen, who are a weekend stay at a beautiful Airbnb, and some, they're a house that you buy with a 30-year mortgage, and there are some that are in between. All right, is that metaphor too mixed up for anybody? Everybody got that one right there? Some of them are temporary and some are long-term. All right, let's just put it there. Don't treat the temporary female like a long-term one. Don't treat the weekend Airbnb like a 30-year mortgage, and don't treat the 30-year mortgage like an Airbnb, because you will fail. You will fail hard. And sometimes those failures, you're going to be paying for those failures forever. All right, don't make these mistakes. Either you're going to be paying forever tangibly, or you're going to be paying forever in terms of regret. If you treat the long-term one like a short-term one, now you missed out on a great opportunity. You treat the short-term one like a long-term one, now you're stuck with something that should have been short-term, but now it's long-term, and you don't have a choice but to deal with it. So I wanted all of us to get on the same page here first. So I want to make sure we're all clear as exactly what I'm talking about here today. So I'm going to go into more detail as we move on into these further points. Is everybody clear what I'm saying here? If you're not, then rewind this and listen to it again. So let's move on to point number 2. Today's topic, once again, specifically for the men, is that some of these women you deal with are for purchase and some of them are for rent. Point number 2, in my experience, a female is going to show you, based on where you are, your discernment, your personal judgment, which one they are based on their own expectations and actions around you. They're going to show you which one they are. They're going to show you, is this a long-term person for me, or is this a short-term person for me? That's going to be based on several factors. It's going to be based on where they are mentally and where they're looking to go. It's going to be based on where you are mentally and where you are looking to go, what you're going to see in certain individuals that you come across. And it's going to be based on how you and that female you meet present yourselves to each other. You can present yourself as a certain type of person in one setting and present yourself as a completely different person in another setting, and therefore you will be perceived differently by different people based on how you decide to show up. So this matters. It matters just as much how you show up as it does how she shows up. It's not all about what the other person is doing. Again, here at Work on Your Game, we always bring the conversation back to number 1, which is you. You have the choice of how you show up. You have the choice of how you present yourself, and you have the choice of what decisions that you make. So no matter what the other person does, you ultimately get to choose what you do and what you do not do. So you may think that every woman that you meet they want to be the long-term person for you and they want to settle in with you for life. You'd be wrong, because some females might meet you and say, okay, this guy might be temporary for me, but he ain't long-term for me for whatever reason. Maybe that's where she's at mentally. Maybe that's just how she sees you as a person. Maybe that's just how she's feeling in the moment. Who knows why? You can't read another person's mind. But understand, not everybody's looking at you as a long-term thing, just like you're not looking at everybody else as a long-term thing. All right, some people are going to see you and want to be a short-term engagement with you. They want to be the weekend getaway, never see you or hear from you ever again. They want to use you the same way you might want to use them. And others might be the opposite. And there are many stations in between. Let's be clear. I'm not just saying this is binary extremes. There are going to be in-betweens, and oftentimes you might not even know which one is going to be until you get further into dealing with a person and you find out who they are and where they're at mentally, and you decide who you are and where you're at mentally, at least as it refers to that individual person. So this is based on who they are, where they are, and their assessment of you, and vice versa. The way you show up matters, as I just said. And we're going to get to that a little bit more in a moment. So do not be fooled by a beautiful Airbnb experience. A beautiful short-term experience does not mean you're the first nor the last to spend a weekend in that house. All right, is that clear enough? All right, just because you had a beautiful short-term experience with someone, a female that you like, doesn't necessarily mean you're the first nor the last to do so. Let's be clear about it. Again, I told you all that we're gonna have an adult conversation here today. And for the males, there are many, and I targeted this specifically to the young males who are coming up, the under 30 males who are coming up, because oftentimes when you first get out there into the world and you get out and putting your game out there into the world, whatever your game happens to be, just presenting yourself, you're gonna run into some females who are interested in you and some females who you are interested back. But at the same time, you have to understand that the game has been around long before you or she was ever around, and the game will be around long after you and she are gone. And therefore, you have to understand these aspects of the game that somebody who has already seen it can tell you that you might not be able to figure out on your own. So hopefully you have some people in your life who can reinforce everything I'm telling you here today. So if you think anything I'm telling you here today is some bullshit, ask somebody else, let them confirm. All right, let them listen to this and then tell you if I said some bullshit or if I got anything wrong. But I'm telling you the truth. I'm laying the game down for you so you don't make any mistakes. And again, I've seen way too many mistakes being made by men who clearly don't understand the game that's actually being played. They think they're playing the game when they're actually getting played in the game. Making mistakes, treating short-term engagements like long-term ones, and then they're the ones who gets left holding the bag and they're left having to pay the bill, literally paying the bill for the next 18 years. Do not be fooled by a beautiful short-term experience, because you're not the first person to have that short-term experience. All right, am I being clear here? Let's move on to point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is males. Some of the females you meet are for long-term purchase and some of them are for rent. Number 3, a human being can only be in one place at a time. All right, this is a limitation of humans. We can't be in more than one place at once, meaning a woman who you meet could see one male as a weekend engagement, a short-term thing, and they can see another male as a house in which they want to grow roots and be with long-term. They could look at two different men, two completely different ways. Translated, this means the following for you. The way you present yourself is just as much a signal to a female as the way that she presents herself is a signal to you. It's often when knowing as many males as I know, and hearing the kind of conversations males have about females, a lot of males talk about females as if, well, look, she's dressing that way, she's presenting herself that way, she posts on social media that way. Well, she's obviously, she's presenting herself as a short-term thing or as a long-term thing. And I never hear males they never talk about holding themselves to the same standard. They never say, well, look at the way that I post. Look at the things that I talk about. Look at the way that I present myself. Look at the way that I talk. Look at the way that I'm portrayed on the internet. If someone was to Google me, what am I presenting myself as? Am I presenting myself as a long-term investment? Am I presenting myself as a short-term thing? Males, understand, your presentation matters just as much. The way that you talk, the way that you articulate yourself or don't, the way that you dress, the way that you speak to people, the way that you show up in a room, in person, all of these things are signals to the women that you may be interested in as to if you are long-term material or short-term material. And it's not all just in snap judgments, because again, many times you might have to meet a person and kind of get to know them a little bit and talk to them a little bit to get a feel for, all right, where is this person really at? Where are they at mentally? Do they have anything up there in between their ears? Is there more than meets the eye than just the car that they drive or the clothes that they're wearing or whatever that person may know about you on the surface? Sometimes you might have to get to know a person a little bit just to get a feel for where they're at and if they're worth going any deeper with. Now, again, you probably have these ideas when it comes to the females you meet, but understand they have these same ideas when it comes to you. And just as much as there are plenty of opportunities for you and you have plenty of choices, all right, they have probably more choices than you have. For most males, the females you meet have more choices than you do. So understand that they are assessing you the same way that you're assessing them. You are sending signals as well. So what are you looking for? This is the question that you should ask yourself. What are you looking for? Are you looking for something short term? Because if so, you're going to attract a whole bunch of short-term opportunities, some which you may take, some which you may not. Whatever you decide to do, make sure you make short-term decisions based on those short-term opportunities. And again, don't do anything that's going to tie you into a long-term commitment based on a short-term opportunity. Protect yourself. If you're looking for short-term, that's what you'll attract. If you're looking for long-term, stop acting like a short-term individual. If you're looking for a long-term person, ask yourself the following. What do I want in that long-term person? What kind of person am I trying to attract? What type of woman am I trying to attract? And then list it out, write it down. Everything you're looking for in a woman. Then ask yourself, what kind of man would this woman be interested in? And then ask yourself, am I this person? And if you can't answer the question affirmatively, then that should tell you something about why you are not attracting the type of female that you're looking for. Any males listen to this, been in that situation? You're looking for a certain type of female. You can't find her. You're wondering why you can't find her. And here's the answer right here. I just gave it to you. List out the type of female you're looking for. All right. Every attribute or aspect of that person that you're looking for. Then ask yourself, based on your best judgment, what kind of man would this woman be interested in? And then ask yourself, are you that person? The answer may bother you, may disturb you a little bit, may make you a little bit uncomfortable when you realize, or if you realize that, damn, I'm not being the type of person that this woman that I want would be interested in. Based on your best judgment, I'm not that person right now. What does that mean? That means some work needs to be done, not on them. You don't need to move to a new neighborhood. What you need to do is do some work on yourself. Because when you change who you're being, then it will automatically bleed into changing what you do. And then when you change what you do, that'll change your results. Meaning you'll meet different people. You'll attract different people. You'll have different types of conversations. Different types of people will be attracted to you because you change who you're being, and then the results will change. But usually people get this backwards. They try to get the result first, then they change what they do, then they would change who they're being as a person. This is why they don't get the outcomes that they want, because they're doing the equation backwards. Make sure you're not doing it backwards. A human being can only be in one place at a time, meaning people can only see you as you're presenting yourself. You change how you present yourself, people will see you different. If you're looking for something long-term, stop presenting yourself as a short-term person. Write down what it is that the long-term person you want would want, and then ask yourself if you're that person. All right, I said that 3 times already. I think it's important. Again, see episode 1058, limiting your associations, 3 levels of people. 2-minute people, 2-hour people, and 2-day people. Which one are you? If you're looking for a long-term thing, and you meet a woman who's looking for a long-term thing, but you show up and present yourself as a short-term individual, then listen, she might use you for the short term and then stop returning your phone calls. And now you're heartbroken and wonder why you were looking for long-term. You thought she was looking for long-term, and maybe she is, but she didn't see you as that type of person who was worthy of long-term because of the way you presented yourself, meaning there's some work that you need to do. Not that she needs to do, that you need to do. And that's why she used you as a short term and then let you go. Left you in the wind because of your presentation. It has nothing to do with her. Why? Because that's just the way that she decided to perceive you. Now, hey, maybe she's wrong, but you'll never be able to prove it to her. Well, actually, kind of you could, but we'll never know. Maybe you'll see her again, maybe you won't. But had you shown up different, maybe the situation would have gone different. This is the game that you're in, folks. Episode 1210, do not complain, play the game. Other people's perception of you is under your control based on the way that you choose to present yourself. But if someone chooses to see you one way that may end up being wrong, listen, you can't make them think any different. You can't control the way another person thinks, but you can control the way that people recognize you based on the way that you choose to show up. In other words, your being. Take control over your being as best you can by doing the exercise that I just gave you. And as I said earlier, males out there, and I know this from my personal experience, so I'm qualified to say it. A lot of males talk about, when we're talking amongst ourselves, talk about females as if we are using them, as if they are not using us the exact same way. Females use you the same way you use them. They might not have the same emotional makeup or not be experiencing the same feelings, or maybe more feelings or less feelings, but they are using you the same way you're using them. It's not a one-way street. All right, so they have, and again, females in general have many more options when it comes to males than males have options when it comes to females. So you are actually trying to be chosen. You're not doing the choosing. Most men, most of the time. Point number 4. Today's topic, once again, is some females are for purchase and some of them are for rent. And you have to be very discerning in making the right choice, which is which. Number 4, males, as I just said, I just stepped on this point. You must be very good at discerning the difference between females who are long-term and females who are short-term. In other words, what you're going to buy and what you're going to rent. All right, you probably don't want to buy too many. All right, we're not talking about investment properties here. We're talking about a house to live in. All right, you can only live, your ass can only be in one house at a time. So you can only buy one for the most part, unless you live in a polygamous community where you can have more than one. But let's just assume you're not in that and you're in a monogamous community in the general world. You can only buy one. Everything else is short term. So you got to be really smart and very wise about, all right, where am I going to make a long-term decision and where am I going to make short-term decisions? Decisions with an S on the end, as in plural. Short-term is decisions, plural. Long-term is one decision. All right, you don't want to make too many long-term decisions with too many different people. I heard that can be kind of stressful. I heard it can be kind of costly. I heard that can be a lot of work. Again, I just heard it. This is just off what I heard. Don't take you can go find somebody and ask them personally, and you can confirm that as well. Tell me if I got it wrong. Text me, 305-384-6894. There are some females out there who you're going to meet who say that, and they say all the right things about wanting to be the long-term one. They want to be the one that gets bought, but they conduct themselves like they're short-term people. They conduct themselves like rentals. You had to trust your instincts and not your impulses. Let me say that one more time. Males, trust your instincts and not your impulses. Those are two different things. As they say, men have two different brains. All right, one up in between the ears and one down below the waist. All right, instincts, that's usually something that comes from in between the ears. All right, impulses, that's down below the waist. Think with your instincts. Trust your instincts, not your impulses. Your impulses will cause you to make long-term decisions with short-term people. And then now you have a long-term payback that you need to make for that, for lack of a better term. Many things in your life are going to be dependent on this skill of discernment. Your life depends on it because, again, do you want to be connected for the next 18 years to someone that was supposed to be 18 minutes? How much of your paycheck you get to keep? Who you're forever connected to based on the choices that you make, and a life that you might bring into the world based on a bad decision or a lack of decision, a lack of discernment, a lack of quality judgment. Making the wrong decision with the wrong female could attach you to that woman for literally the rest of your life because you took an impulsive action that has a long-term repercussion. All based on your lack of discernment, your lack of judgment, your lack of self-control, and your lack of discipline. Males, as I said here on the show, we always bring it back to number 1. Even though somebody else might have did something, even though somebody else might have tried to set you up, they might have tried to trap you, there might have been their whole plan from the beginning. If you fall into the trap, you're the dumbass. Why? Because I'm giving you the game right now, so now you have no excuse. Now, if you already made this excuse, now what you need to do is take what you heard here today and you need to go give the game to other males out there so that they don't fall into the trap the same way that you did because you saw the game. You saw exactly how it goes. So make sure it doesn't happen to the next person. Each one teach one. Let's recap today's class, which is some people are for purchase and some are for rent. Now, this is a conversation that's targeted specifically to the men who are up and coming right now, you're out here playing the game, you're interested in females. You just want to make sure that you don't make the wrong decision with the wrong person and end up having to pay for that decision for a long time. Point number one. What I mean by this euphemism, and I said it plainly, some females are good for temporary enjoyment and some are for long-term commitments. All right, there's some people out there who you're going to meet in life who are a weekend stay at an Airbnb, metaphorically speaking, and some of them are a 30-year mortgage, a big house that you're going to live in and grow roots in for the rest of your life. Do not treat the Airbnb like the 30-year mortgage. Don't treat the 30-year mortgage like an Airbnb. You will fail. Point number two. In my experience, females will show you which one they are to you in that moment based on their expectations and actions around you. And listen, not all of them are long-term. Not all of them are short-term. And some of them are somewhere in between the two. But it's all based on who they are, where they are, and their assessment of you. And they are assessing you the same way that you are assessing them. And just because you had a great short-term experience with somebody doesn't mean you should turn it into a long-term experience, because you're probably not the first person who had that thought. Keep that in mind. Point number three. A human being can only be in one place at a time, meaning a woman can see a man as a short-term thing, but see another man as a long-term thing. Based on what? The way you present yourself. If you want a woman to see you as a long-term thing, then you need to ask yourself, what type of person does that type of woman look for? What is she interested in? What kind of traits does that man need to have? And then weigh yourself against that. Am I that person? Am I showing up as that type of individual? If you are not, that should tell you something about why you're not getting the results that you want, why you're meeting women who you want to be with long-term, but they're treating you like a short-term thing. It has something to do with the way that you're presenting yourself. It is not something she's doing wrong. It's something that you are doing that is causing that perception. Point number four. Males, you must get very good at discerning the difference between females to buy and females to rent. All right, there are some females who say all the right things about wanting to be bought, but they are conducting themselves like rentals. You must trust your instincts and not your impulses. I will say it again, trust your instincts and not your impulses. Many things are dependent on this skill. Your life, how much of your money you get to keep, who you are forever connected to based on the choices that you make. Making the wrong decision with the wrong female could attach you to that woman for literally the rest of your life. Impulsive actions have long-term repercussions. Be smart, be discerning, protect yourself, and trust your judgment. If you don't have good judgment, then listen to my episode on discernment. And until you develop it, don't do anything that has a long-term repercussion. Make everything short-term until you know what the hell you're doing to make a long-term investment. And again, when you make a long-term investment, you don't want to make too many of those. Because again, I heard that they could be very stressful. I also heard that the costs add up pretty quickly. But again, you just have to take my word for that one. I don't know from firsthand experience, and I'm not trying to. And I hope you're not either. Send me a text. Tell me the best insight you got from today's class. My number is 305-384-6894. If you are a professional who's looking for someone who can help coach you through your personal and professional development, you may be a great candidate for my 3rd-day mastermind. It's the only place I offer one-on-one direct coaching. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com/call. Fill out a quick form. We'll hop on a Zoom call, talk about where you're at, where you want to go. I'll let you know if I could possibly be the bridge between here and there, and we'll go from there. Work on your game. Dre, all